stream, I won't have been recording this first little while. I just remember to turn on my audio. Okay, so generally the breakouts are going to be pretty short, right? They'll be like an hour long-ish, right? And they'll be about something really specific, right? Whereas the lectures are going to be a bit more general. They'll be like 2 hours long. Today's is going to be a bit longer, right? But that's out of the ordinary. Here are some of the things that we're going to look at. I'll let you stare at it for a second, get acquainted. The curriculum, that's the first one, right? We're going to talk a little bit about like, well, what the heck are we going to do over the next 10 weeks or so, right? You could poke and prod at like the seniors, right, and try to get some info out of them, or we could look at the slideshow. So we're going to talk about the curriculum. We're going to talk about the environment that you're going to use to develop your stuff. So I know you've been doing readings and stuff, and I know you've done prep work and all that. We're just going to go over that a little bit more so that everybody's comfortable with it. We're going to talk about some stuff called version control, right? This stuff is my favorite. So you're going to spend some good time there. And then at the end of it, we're going to tie it all up together with like a little bit of an example for your like assignment workflow, right? Now, before I dive into things, I want to let you know that feel free to ask questions really like at any time. Right? If anything I'm saying is sort of confusing, right? If things just aren't making sense, right? Just shoot your hand right up or yell at me. My feelings won't get hurt. I have like thick skin. So just be like, yo, Nima, none of what you just said just made any sense, like at all. And I will say, yeah, okay, it's my job to make sure that you understand this stuff. So I have no problem rolling back and making sure that we understand every single bit of what's going on. So we're all good. Cool. Can we practice that? Can we be like, yo, Nima? Yeah, cool. Now I just wanted some ad libs for my like for the rap I'm putting together. So wait, can you say it again? Yo, Nima. All right, thanks. Yeah. So mixtape coming out spring 2019. Get hyped. Anyways, curriculum. I thought it'd be funny to say that we're gonna watch a short video, but we're actually looking at a slideshow. I don't know why I thought that would be funny, but like I got some chuckles. So the curriculum. We're all seeing it? Awesome. Got it. Okay. Oh, wait, no, you know what would be useful is if I could see the notes for myself while I do it. So, give me a second. I'm going to adjust display preferences. I'm going to change the arrangement. Whoop. All right, you are seeing the opposite of what you should be seeing. Okay, and over to the right. Awesome. Dope. Okay, and then over on my side, am I seeing notes? See, I totally should have done this before, but hey, whatever. Wait, where'd it go? Ah, snap. Is there a button that says present with? Present review. Awesome. And now this stuff I drag over to myself. Perfect. Okay. All right, welcome. We're seeing some stuff over there. I'm going to go previous. Welcome to the curriculum. This whole slide is not the curriculum. It's kind of split off over the slides. So this is your syllabus for you know, most of the stuff. Week 1 to 4. Now, for some reason, the thing's not displaying over my side, so I'm just going to work out here. Week 1, software development. We're going to look at things like Node. I'm just going to list out some words, and then we'll talk about them a little bit. Node, testing, pairing, approach, debugging. Wow, those are good Scrabble words, right? You're like, awesome, I'm going to hit Scrabble night. My family's not going to know what hit them. Mock challenge and test. We'll talk about that in a sec. So week 1 is all about preparing you for the workflow, right, of the boot camp, right? Workflow of the boot camp, the mindset of a developer, right? That's what we're really kind of going towards. So I'll break down a couple of these words. Node. Node is the JavaScript thing that you're going to use to develop your programs. So Node is specifically a program that we're going to use. Testing. We're going to talk about the process for checking to see whether the things that we wrote are correct. Testing. And there's specific processes that we use for that. Right? Protocols. Pairing. What does pairing mean? Has anybody here read the pair programming part yet? Is that a yes? Cool. So you know what pair programming is. Make heavy use of it. Now in the first week, we pair you up, right? After that, we don't necessarily pair you up anymore, right? But, you know, you might as well like make a friend or two, or all of you. Like, you could just be a big mesh of friends and pair program together. And I think you'll find that it'll help you figure out problems easier than on your own, right? I could stand up here and just say that pair programming is awesome, right? But I'd rather just kind of have you find it hard to program by yourself and then find it easy to program with other people, right? Does anybody see the duck on the wall over there? Yeah. Right. Why is there a duck on the wall? Yeah, I don't either, right? Okay. I can tell you that a dog is on the wall because dogs are cool. And because there are sometimes dogs in the office. Okay. Are there ducks in the office? Not really. So the ducks are a programming concept or a software development meme. Basically, has anybody here heard of rubber duck debugging before?
Heard it, but don't know.
Yeah, so I heard it but don't know. So debugging is the process of trying to figure out what's wrong with your program, right? Sometimes it's helpful if I can't figure out what's wrong with my program to have another person come in, right? Have another person come in and look at my code, or have another person come in and I'll explain to them what the code's supposed to do. And as I explain to this person what the code is supposed to do and I look at the code that I wrote, I might identify that the thing I'm saying and the thing I wrote are two different things, right? That's just a thing that happens sometimes when you talk through a problem, right? Now, I can't always drag over people and just shout at them for 30 minutes. And be like, no, you see with this button, supposed to click on this thing and this other thing, you know. And the person's just like, well, I have work, like I have to leave. I missed my bus. It's like 7:30 p.m. or whatever, right? We can't always do that as developers. So in the community, people have decided to use rubber ducks to talk to, right? You keep a rubber duck maybe on your desk and be like, hey, Larry the duck, this is what my program's supposed to do. That's why there's a duck there. It's called rubber duck debugging, right? Just want to like demystify some of these things. Now, that kind of takes us into approach and debugging. So something that you're going to get comfortable with over the course of this week is looking at a problem and saying, okay, well, what do I need to do to get started, right? Maybe not to solve the problem all in one go, but like, how do I get started and how do I get productive, right? That's an approach that's going to be, you know, fairly unique to your like behavior and who you are as a person, but there are kind of like best practices that you will pick up over the course of the week, right? Those are the things that we want you to focus on that week, right? I want to stress, by the end of week 1, you will not be an amazing programmer, right? Don't put that weight on yourself. But by the end of week 1, you will be aware of what Node is, and you will be aware of how testing is kind of done, and you will be aware of some methods for approaching problems, right? Those are the things that we're focused on. Week 2, we get into our first web app, right? We're going to talk about things like HTTP, REST, whatever that is. Luckily, that's sectioned off into week 2, so you don't need to worry about it right now. Similarly, like the deeper we go into the weeks, the less sense these things make. And honestly, interestingly, the more like acronyms we kind of get popping up. There's like 0 acronyms in the first one. And week 3 is, there's a JS, there's HTML, CSS, AJAX. I don't know what AJAX is. I mean, I do, I teach this thing, but like I don't know what AJAX is. What's an ORM? I don't know what an ORM is, but you will soon, right? There's a process to it. And the reason I point this out is there's a very, very defined like structure to the way that the boot camp is put up, right? You only need to worry about the things that are in that week at the time, right? And the boot camp is scaffolded out, right? It's scaffolded out, so you should not necessarily have to like bend over backwards right at the beginning, right? Most of the stuff that you're going to do towards the like the first fourth of the boot camp, right? is very much about understanding a concept and then enacting it in as simple of a method as you can. So if you find yourself doing a ton of work, right, it's a place where you stop and you say, hey, am I fighting against the curriculum right now, right? That's something to like be conscious about. Let's talk about week 5. Week 5 is computer science week. It's a remote week, so you're not going to be here. Yeah, you're not going to be here for computer science week. You're going to be working at home. I think you're more than welcome to pop in, right, if you need a little bit of help. But technically, you're on your own that week, right? You still have access to the Slack, so you're going to be talking with each other. But in week 5, we're kind of taking a departure away from the web development stuff, and we're looking more at like general purpose programming things, right? What does it mean to be developing an algorithm? What do people mean when they say something's efficient, right? Those are things that you're going to explore over there, right? So week 5, I think, is personally pretty interesting. It's still a full week of work, though, right? Just because you're not in the space and just because you don't have lectures doesn't mean you don't still have assignments and readings, right? So you will still have that stuff to do. Yep. Okay, and then the big ending of it is week 6 to 10. You got week 6, you're going to talk about React. I love React. If you ask any of the senior cohort right now about React, they're going to have a lot of really good things to say. So like, stick it out. React is awesome. It's super cool. Week 7, we're going to be talking about Ruby and object-oriented programming. But this part here, I know it's really far away from the people in the back. This part here, adopting code, that's the important part for that week. Right? Now, you're going to forget this. I'm going to say this right now, and you're going to forget it until you get to week 7. But the point of week 7 is to teach you about hopping onto a bunch of code that already exists. Right? You go work somewhere, they give you a big project that's already got a ton of stuff in it. Right? That's going to be a different way of working than what you're going to do up until that week. Right? So up until week 7, you will mostly be creating things from scratch. Right, from scratch. So you'll see something from one end all the way out to the other end. When we get to week 7, we're going to look at something that already exists, and you're going to get comfortable with that kind of environment, right? But again, I promise you, you will forget that until you reach like week 7, so don't worry. In week 8, we do a little bit more Ruby, but mostly it's where people start final projects, right? So there's final projects, and the final projects roll out all the way up until week 10, right? So week 8, final projects and advanced lectures. So the lectures are still mandatory, right? They're just not technically part of the core curriculum, right? You might learn about things like machine learning, right? Or you might learn about things like A/B testing or whatever, right? Like the instructors generally bring in kind of whatever they're interested in talking about, right? Again, though, still mandatory, right? And throughout the whole process, like the mentors and the instructors are like available to help you out with your assignments and with your projects. So over the course of the boot camp, you work on 4 evaluated projects, right? So there's 4 projects that we evaluate, and they're put in different weeks. So next week, you'll be working on a thing called TinyApp, right? TinyApp is going to be like a URL shortener, kind of like Bitly if you've ever used Bitly before. Week 3, we're making a Twitter clone. Week 4 is your midterm project. Right? So in week 4, you form teams, and you pick from a selection of project ideas that we have already for you. Right? There's a bunch of project ideas and specifications for what the project's supposed to do. Right? You pick it, and then you build it from scratch with your team. Right? And actually, that's what the you all saw this earlier. Right? So that whole process, your first kind of introduction to working in a big team on a thing. Then there's week 6. Where we make a Slack clone, right? We make a Slack clone. And honestly, I think these are a lot of fun. At the end of the boot camp, you end up with a nice portfolio of things that you have built, right? With all of these assignments and all these projects, there's ample room for you to add special functionality as you see fit, right? So we don't all end up with necessarily the same cookie cutter apps, right? Like, you will have something special if you decide to specialize it, right? So this stuff's going to look really good into your in your portfolio, and I find that it gives a lot of people room for creativity, right? Room for trying out interesting new designs and stuff like that. There's also just the idea that these projects are closer to your experience in the real world, right? So the assignments that you kind of start off with are like, sum up everything in an array or whatever, right? That's not necessarily the things that you'll do at work, right? At work, it's going to be more big picture stuff like this. Cool. So these are the 4 evaluated projects. And then there are 2 projects that do not get evaluated, right? So let's talk about them. The first one is the GitHub API client, right? So this is something that you're going to be working on next week. It's a single day project. It's just a single day kind of, let's put something together. You'll be working with the GitHub API to download some information, right? But you're going to see that it's something that only takes you, it should take you just that one day. So we don't evaluate that. And then the other one is the Jungle project, right? And the Jungle project is that week 7 project where I've said that you work on existing code, right? So in the Jungle project, you're going to inherit a big Rails application, right? A big old Rails application, and you'll be asked to make some small changes to it, right? We don't evaluate these 2, right? Now, just because we're not evaluating them, though, doesn't mean that you shouldn't put in the work. They're still important. Yeah, let's see. Next. There are 4 tech interviews. There's 4 tech interviews. Now, you've already done a tech interview at this point already, right? You've done 2? 1? 2? All right, certain number of tech interviews you have done. You're going to do more of them, and they're going to be increasing in difficulty and in fun. There's like a linear correlation. It goes like, the first one's like, eh. The second one's like, whoa. The third one, it's like, what? And the fourth one is just mind-blowingly fun. OK, no, they're all fun kind of equally, but they do get harder. The thing about the tech interviews, specifically week 2, 3, and 8. So week 2, 3, and 8, you will be interviewed on things that you had done the previous week. So let's test this out. What do you think you're getting interviewed on? Like, what week's content do you think you're getting interviewed on for week 2? Week 1, awesome, woo! All right, yeah, welcome to addition and subtraction boot camp, yay! So you don't have to study for these things. You just have to keep up with the content and keep doing the assignments that you've been given, right? You're going to be fine, right? These tech interviews are, the week 9 one's a bit of a special one, but you still don't have to study for that one, right? Just do your work. The interviews are going to be you and generally like a designated mentor, right? You just shack up in one of the rooms over there, usually like the taco room or the egg room or whatever, right? For about an hour, right? 45 minutes to an hour, and we'll just ask you questions and we'll have a good conversation, right? It's your opportunity to get some extra mentor help if you'd like. Right? But generally, it's a great opportunity for you to develop good interview skills. Right? We take it as a way to evaluate you and assess your knowledge and your progress. Right? But you should also take it as a way for you to improve yourself. Right? So interviews are excellent. They can happen anytime that week. Like, we will schedule you for an interview, and you'll be told ahead of time what day of the week your interview will be and what time. If you get scheduled for an interview and the interview does not happen for some reason, like maybe the mentor is late, right? Or maybe the room is booked or something. If you make it to Friday and nobody has rescheduled, like you just haven't gotten that thing rescheduled and it hasn't happened, let us know. Let us know as soon as possible. Because we want everybody to do the interviews on the assigned weeks, right? So just heads up. Because it might happen that you just slip through the cracks, so let us know. Cool. You also have 4 multiple choice quizzes. Or not 4. You have quizzes, multiple choice, in the first 4 weeks. All I want to say about this is that you can and should retake them if you don't get a perfect score. And then there is the assessment test. The assessment test is in week 2, but you have a mock test this Friday, right? So this Friday, you'll be going through the same process as doing the assessment test, so that you can get comfortable with the environment that we use for the test, right? Right. So you can get used to that, so that you can get used to the format of the questions, right? All of that stuff, Right? So a mock test is happening this Friday, right? You will have the opportunity to keep working on the test until I believe Sunday night, right? So don't stress about it too much. And then the actual test is on Tuesday. Cool. And really want to point out, the assessment test is just as important as the project, right? It's not more important, it's not less important, just as important. Yeah. And here you go. This is like accumulation of your evaluation. There's the completion of your assignments. Code reviews. So we as mentors will be going around looking at your code. When you submit your code, we'll be taking a look at it. Did they do it properly? That's the kind of thing we're looking at, right? Tech interviews. We assess you on the tech interviews, right? Give you little scores. Quiz answers, right? Project evaluations. So when you submit one of the big projects, we go through a whole checklist and evaluate you on different like qualities, right? Is your code good? Did you hit every single one of the features that we asked you to implement? That kind of stuff. Test answers, and then assistances. So you can make assistance requests. Just spam the thing with assistance requests, right? We will come help you. It's your job. But I do want to stress, really put in some effort before you pull the trigger on that and declare an assistance request, right? Try to put in as much effort as you can into solving the problem so that when an assistance request comes in, or like when you make one, you have one kind of targeted question, right? Still, don't feel bad about making assistance requests, but I'm just trying to say, like, put in as much effort on your own as you can. Cool. And that brings us to this last slide. Thank you. Yeah. So that's the curriculum. Any questions about the curriculum? Yeah.
You mentioned final project?
Right. So the final project, did I take that out of here? Yeah. So the final project you started in, let's go back. Right, so the final project, you start it in week 8, right? You start your final project in week 8, you get into groups, you decide on what you're going to build, you put together your little not prototypes, but like plan things out, and then you spend like 2 and a bit weeks just working on it. Week 10 is remote for you, so you're still working on your thing, but you're not in here, right? You don't necessarily have mentor support. But over the course of your final project, like, you will have the support of mentors for helping you maybe decide on like your database structure, right? Or maybe you decide to use a tool that we haven't taught you in bootcamp, which you're free to do. Like, you're free to just kind of explore, right? So if you decide to use something that hasn't been taught in bootcamp, the mentors are there to help you with that, right? In week 10, there's demo day, right? So there's an employer demo day, right? On the same day, like, you demo your stuff to employers. And then later in the day, there's like a friends and family and community demo, where again, you demo the thing, but there's no employers. Okay. Does that kind of answer that a little bit? Yeah? Cool, cool. Yeah. Yeah, so that's how the final projects are going to work out. I mean, I know the seniors haven't asked me to do this, but just go poke them once in a while, right? You're fine with that. If they poke you once in a while and be like, yo, what are you working on? Yeah, just ask them, right? Get the inside scoop. They're nice, for the most part, right? Yeah, for the most part. They're like, yeah, like 95% of them are okay. Yeah. No, so yeah, make use of the mentors and the seniors. Cool. So with that then, we're going to transition over into, let me just mirror the displays. We're going to transition into the next portion of this, which is, are you all seeing the same thing? Cool. The next portion of this, which for me is right here, Sublime and awesome shortcuts. So let me just say, woo, done. Okay. We're going to talk about Sublime, and we're going to talk about the awesome shortcuts that Sublime gives you. Yes? Yes, I should do that right now. Thank you. We're going to say that that's 1B. All right. I can't believe I didn't do that. Thanks. Notes. So Oh, right. No, I remember why I didn't do that, because it kind of blends into Sublime and the rest of it. So your method for taking notes in lecture should not be to code along, right? Like we don't suggest coding along to the lectures, right? Because you will likely fall behind, right? You're likely, like if for example, if I'm doing one of the lectures, I will tend to code stupid things at first, right? I will tend to code stuff that doesn't work and make mistakes, and then show you how to fix those mistakes as time goes on. So if you're coding along to like my bad code, right, you're kind of implicitly just picking up those bad habits, or you might just not have time to fix it, and then you just end up with a bunch of garbage that I wrote, right? So we send out notes for you. Also, a lot of this stuff is available in the readings, right? So notes-wise, the things that I would take notes about are like specific things that I say, right? Or like resources that we mention, or vocabulary and terminology and things like that, right? And the tools that I suggest using are, we suggest using Sublime or some other text editor and writing your notes in like a markdown format, right? So have you learned about markdown yet? I'm seeing some nodding heads, right? So there's markdown, and it's just a format for writing text, right? That includes things like making things headers, or making things bold, right, or italicized, right? That kind of stuff. Okay? You use Markdown, so you can write in the same place that you generally write your code. You can also have your notes there, right? Now, for the process of like how to store your notes, right? I would suggest doing something like, let me just write this down here. Okay. I would suggest having a folder, okay? Having like one master folder, one big folder holding little folders, okay? Where each of those little folders might be a week. So I might have a big folder called Lighthouse Notes. Lighthouse Notes, okay? And inside that folder, I might have a folder called Week 1, and a folder called Week 2, and a folder called Week 3, okay? Inside of that, I would suggest then for each one of these having specific folders for day 1 and day 2, right? And then within that, you should, maybe have like one markdown file, right? Or multiple markdown files if you want to get crazy about it. Now, these things, they don't necessarily need to be folders. Like you could have a day 1 notes. You could if you wanted to, right? Now, play around with what kind of works for you. But the nice thing about having a place where you store all your notes is that you can search them, right? Especially if you write them in Markdown, you can search over your project to find those things. And we'll talk about that as we keep talking about Sublime, right? So having one place to store your notes. Now, since Jeremy's here, I also want to ask Jeremy's advice. Jeremy, what is your advice for storing notes?
I certainly wouldn't do anything fancy with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even worried about Markdown, just the text files.
Mm-hmm.
The searchability makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So do something fancy like Word. Searching multiple files, the same tool doesn't work, right? You can open one file and search it, but you can't just be like, search all my crap. So I definitely do not use anything more technically complicated than that.
Yeah.
Those are not technically complicated. And yeah, a directory they live in, I probably wouldn't even bother with subdirectories.
Mm-hmm.
I'd give them names like W1D1 warning, W1D1 breakout.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Like that kind of stuff.
Same thing, but if anything dumber.
Yeah, don't over-engineer your notes is the thing, right? Definitely don't over-engineer that stuff. Keep it as simple as possible, right? Just a place where you can refer back to things, right? And a place where you can easily just loop back and refresh your knowledge, right? So, like you said, like don't go too ham on it, right? This would be like my suggestion is having a week 1, week 2, whatever, like split up. Yeah, and the idea is like a text file, right? A text file. So you'll be working in something like Sublime or whatever text editor you use, because that lets you search over all of your files, right? Unlike searching over Word files, which is difficult, right? So I think we'll talk about this a little bit more as we kind of go on, but definitely like a separate place where you keep your notes. Cool. Let's talk about Sublime a little bit, right? So Sublime is a text editor, right? It's a text editor in the same way that maybe Word is a text editor, or Pages is a text editor, or the little status box on Facebook is a text editor, right? These are all places where you can write things, right? I can choose to write like, hey, yo, what up? Really anywhere I want. But when we're writing code, we might want some extra tools. For example, I might want things like spell check for my code, right? Or we'll call it syntax highlighting and syntax like correction and checking, right? So if I am writing in Word, for example, and I misspell something, I get a cool little red squiggly mark underneath, right? If I'm writing in Word and I write a sentence that doesn't really make sense, like, hey, I dog jump, haha, right? Like, this is not a grammatically correct sentence. Word will give me a nice green squiggly mark underneath to say, hey, your grammar is weird, right? Maybe fix that up, right? We get the same stuff from text editors like Sublime, right? So in this case here right now, I'm working with a markdown file, MD, right? So Sublime has loaded itself up to read markdown files, right? It has prepared itself to be able to interpret this markdown file and give it nice coloring to make it easy to like read and pleasing, pick nice colors and stuff. So just by looking at this, without even understanding what's going on, I can say that line 1 and line 3, there's something different about them, right? Line 1 has this pink pound sign, and this one has 2 orange pound signs. And I can start saying, hey, maybe the color of the pound signs indicates something, right? I didn't set the color. But Sublime is picking a color for me. Right? Same with here. If I write 2 dot over here, and I write 2 dot over here, one of them is colored and the other one is not. Sublime is letting me know that this 2 dot and this 2 dot are different. This one might have some extra meaning that this 2 dot does not have, right? So in this case, we're talking about Markdown, but we might be talking about other files. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm pressing Command N, right? I pressed Command N to create a new file for myself, right? So let's just imagine we're in Sublime. You know what? Let's start from scratch here. I'm going to close things. I'm going to say, OK, I'm just dragging this out. So at any point, you can drag a tab out of the environment that it's in to split it away from the tab structure. So I have my own little window of Sublime here. I just wanted you to see what it's like with nothing in it. OK, so I have a blank file with no name. OK, I'm going to press Command S to save my file, and it asks me somewhere to like save this file. And I'm going to save it maybe inside of this Git Breakout folder, and I'll call this one test.js. OK, I'm going to save. And a couple interesting things have happened. First of all, this says test.js now. Not much of a surprise. But if I go here, I see that the word JavaScript is there. There wasn't, like I didn't show this before, the word JavaScript is not there. So Sublime is going to read the extension of your file name, and it will enact like all those tools that work for that type of file. In this case, we're talking about JavaScript. So if I start writing some JavaScript, we'll go var message equals hello world. Right? You notice that some things have happened. Var is italicized. Equal is this cool like fuchsia pink color, right? We've got syntax highlighting, and that's awesome, right? Oh no, I made a bug in my code. Oh no. Is it easy for me to tell that I've done something wrong in my code? I mean, kinda, right? Like, sort of. The thing is very bright, right? So you should be able to kind of note when you've made some kind of typo if you're using the right tools. So Sublime. Now, I am working within a folder right now. I'm working within a folder, so if I was to go to Finder, and if I was to go to, shoot, where did I put this? I put this in Git Breakout. Okay, so I'm working in this folder right now, and there's a thing called README and a thing called test.js, right? But, and you know what, let me copy this. I'm going to Command C this file from Finder, and I'm just going to paste it a bunch of times. So I've got a bunch of copies of the same file just to have a bunch of them. Right? So there's all these different files. But if I go to Sublime right now, I only see the single file. Most of the projects that we're going to end up working on are going to have lots of files working together. Right? So it's helpful for us to be able to see the whole structure of the folder that we're working with. Right? The whole structure of the project. So this does not help me very much. I would have to like open up each file independently, and that's just annoying. So instead, what I will do is, when I open, so under File, File and Open, or Command O, when I open, instead of just selecting a single file and going to Open, what I'll do instead is I'll select that folder, like my Git Breakout folder. Right? And what happens when I select the entire folder and I open is the window that pops up will have this fancy tree structure for me to look at under here. Right? So I can click on any of the files that I want and have them pop up. Right? So that's going to be nice. Right? If I was to open up one of my like bigger projects, like just open up this one. Look at that. I've got all my files here, and I can keep going deeper and deeper into my stuff. And I can look at a single file at a time if I click on one file, right? You notice that when you click on a file, the name up here is italicized, right? Italicized name. If I double-click on a file, so I double-clicked on a file, the name is no longer italicized. And what's cool about that is now if I go click on another file, that original file that I double-clicked on will stay open, right? I can also double-click up here, I think. No, that's a different thing. So this way I can have multiple files open in different tabs, right? This is good. As you work on multiple files with multiple tabs, right, you want to be able to switch back and forth between them, right? You want to have this stuff like easy to reach. Maybe you want to have your notes open and the assignment that you're working on at the same time, right? You want to be able to be able to switch back and forth between those. So you'll notice now I've opened up a bunch of Sublime windows. I've opened up a hell of a lot of them. If I really wanted to see how many I've opened, on Mac I can take 3 fingers and open, like, I'm going to slide up, and I'm seeing that I have a bunch of these. Right? So I've got a heck of a lot of Sublime instances open. Now, if I wanted to maybe switch between all the different Sublime windows, right? One thing that I could do is Command Tab, right? I could Command Tab, and when I get to Sublime, so on a Linux machine it would be a Control Tab or Alt Tab, sorry. When I get to Sublime, I could press like the arrow key, right? So I press down on my arrow key, and now I can see all my particular instances. That's one way of doing it. Or if I want it to be really funky, I can go Command and the tilde, right? So you have a tilde key. And Command and the tilde key is going to, like, I'm just going to hold this, and it's just cycling me through every single Sublime window that I have, right? Without taking me into, like, Firefox for some reason, or Chrome or something, right? So you might have your notes and your assignment, and your notes and your assignment, your notes and your assignment. Right? That's something that might help you out. Cool. If I wanted to navigate between tabs on here, right, I can obviously click on them, or I could Command Shift and then use the square brackets. So Command Shift with one square bracket, like the one on the left, is going to take me to the left, and Command Shift with the square bracket on the right is going to take me to the right. Right? Just handy keyboard shortcuts. Right? Now, I'm going to be honest. and say that I personally don't make use of a ton of shortcuts. Or at least I'm not aware of myself using tons of shortcuts. But you might enjoy it, right? You might really get into it, and you might find that being able to use shortcuts takes a lot of cognitive load off of you, and then you can just focus on your work, right? By all means, practice that stuff. And the tools that you use usually come with a ton of great shortcuts. So if we wanted to look at the shortcuts that are specifically built into Sublime, I mean, one of the coolest ones is this. Here's a bunch of code, right? A bunch of JavaScript code. And I highlight this thing, and I'm like, you know what? I want to comment this out. And we have talked about comments in JavaScript already, right? Can somebody verify that? OK, awesome. So we've talked about comments in JavaScript. I could comment it out by going // in front of each one of these lines. I could comment it out by going /*, and then */. Or if I wanted to be real funky, I could highlight the stuff that I want to highlight, that I want to comment, and I can go command and then /, and it will toggle itself. And if I do it again, it will uncomment itself. Awesome. You make probably a lot of use of this kind of functionality. Right? So commenting things out, there's particularly Command T. So if I'm in a folder, if I'm in a project like this, and I go Command T, it's going to take a second, maybe if it's a big project. But what pops up now is a little menu of every single file that you have access to within that project. So I have a ton of stuff in here, but like what we can start doing is writing something. So for example, say I want to go to try catch async over there. Try catch async. And it'll show me that that's the one, which is dope. Right? So I might be working inside of here, and I just don't want to navigate through all of my files to be able to find the file that I want to edit. Command T, and just write out the name of the file. Right? Try catch. Right? And honestly, Sublime is super cool because as you write this thing out, it will load up the page for you. So you don't even need to finish writing the thing or clicking on it. Right? Bop it, and it took me to bop it. Right? So Command T is honestly like a lot of fun. You can just kind of, like alternate notes. Hey, it took me there. All right, Command T. There's also one that's Command P. Now, what did I say? Command P? Yeah, Command P. Now, oh no, that's not it. Command T. Let me see. Tools. Oh man. OK, I cannot remember the specific command I'm thinking about, but it's not actually important. It's this go to anything, but the idea is if I'm in a project like this, I should shoot. Yeah, there's a specific command that I'm going to look for, and I'm going to show you right after we take a short break, like a 5-minute break, because I have to plug in my computer. That brings up more commands for doing things within Sublime, such as toggling syntax highlighting on and off, or installing packages and plugins and stuff like that. That's something that I'll show you a little bit of, but it's not necessarily crucial. So XCV. What was that? Command Shift P. There we go. Command Shift P, right, will bring up things like arithmetic code folding, HTML snippets, package control for listing or installing packages. I invite you to explore this stuff, right? Specifically things like installing packages, right? Because you might want to extend the functionality of your editor, right? Maybe you don't like the look, like the theme. Maybe you don't like the theme of your app right now. Like, here you go, Sublime. I might go into like select color theme, and I can pick all of these themes. Wow. I mean, I'm a hacker. I'm in, right? I like I like monokai, right? But so Command Shift P, thank you for that. Where you just, honestly, you could just write out a command and something will usually pop up. Let's see, is there anything I want to talk about with regards to this right now? Sublime, awesome shortcuts. Sublime Tutor, that's what I want to talk about. So this will be in the notes that I'll send out. There will be a link to this. But there is a really cool website called Sublime Tutor that has a thing that you can download for Sublime, right? And what it is it's like an instructor, like it's a tutorial for learning the ins and outs of Sublime. It's pretty long. Maybe there's more stuff than you really need, but it might be worth downloading and playing around with in your spare time if you have any, right? Yeah, so Sublime Tutor I'll put in the notes, and honestly, it looks really cool. I haven't played through all of it myself, but I've heard good things. Before I move on, two things I want to say. I've mentioned that you might want to extend the functionality of your editor. That might be something like, I'm writing Markdown. Maybe I think it would be cool if there was a split pane right here that then showed me the rendered Markdown next to it or something, right? Maybe you're like, whoa, that would be super cool, dude. Look it up. Maybe there's a package that does that, right? There's also, are you able to, in here, see, I don't tend to use Sublime very much. What I use is a thing called Visual Studio Code. I'm not going to say that you have to install this. I just want you to know that there's many options for text editor, right? So if you happen not to like Sublime for some reason, right, you might try out something like Atom or Visual Studio Code, right? You can just Google Sublime alternatives, and that will give you. I'm personally a huge fan of VS Code, personally because I like the little bug icon. I think is really cute. I mean, it's got good tools as well, but I like the design. Okay, so my computer's about to die. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to continue, and I'll show you the version control and the assignment workflow. Sound good? Cool. Honestly, it would be more like a 4-minute break because I just have to plug in. So we'll just pick it up again real quick. In the second half, what we're going to do is we're going to look at Git a bit, right, and look a bit at like maybe the workflow that you might use as you're working on your assignments. Yeah. So first thing first, I'm going to want it to be inside of Vagrant. We all have Vagrant installed. Nice. Vagrant's cool. It puts us all on the same environment, and a lot of the tools that we're going to need to use over the course of the bootcamp, such as Postgres or Mongo, these are like databases that you will talk about in a couple weeks. Those things are already installed in your Vagrant environment, right? Which is nice. So I am going to go into Vagrant. So Vagrant SSH. I've been here at Lighthouse for a year now, coming up almost. Like I started in January, and this is like mid-October. It's more like 10.5 months. And I get a little bit of joy every time I see the little Lighthouse picture come up. I just love little pictures in the terminal. Quick aside, I use a terminal called Fish. So your default terminal that you're using is called Bash. People are going to say, go into Bash, right? There's one called Zush, or ZSH. I use Fish, mostly because I like the little fish logo, but also because if I run Fish logo, I get a fish out. Yeah, I don't know. I can't get enough of the little fish. I also have a thing called screen fetch. You run screen fetch, and it takes a second, and then it prints out okay, it takes like a couple seconds, geez. But what it's gonna print out is a picture of, there you go. It's gonna print out a picture representing your operating system, right? So in your case, it might be like Ubuntu or something, right? Plus information about your computer. And I love the colors. It's awesome. Okay, I'm not just pointing this out to say like, oh look, I've hacked my system or whatever. Just trying to say like, have a little bit of fun in your terminal, right? Get comfortable with it. You can't really break this stuff. Honestly, like anytime you mess it up, you can just reinstall, right? I set up Vagrant in like the 2 minutes before Breakout. It's like, oh right, I forgot to install Vagrant. You just run it and it installs, right? You just had to run a command. I'm trying to say like, mash the hell out of this stuff, right? Get comfortable with your tools, and make sure that you give yourself ample opportunities in the first part of the boot camp to do that, right? If that means coming up with new, like editing the colors of your terminal for you, like if that's what it means, then go for it, right? Just one way or another, get comfortable. So I'm in Vagrant. And let's type out some commands. What does ls do? Yeah, ls stands for list subdirectories. I currently have no subdirectories. I have no files. How do I make a file? Or sorry, how to make a folder? mkdir, right? Make directory. What are we going to call this one? Nima's first directory. There you go. Let's make another one. Keeping with the tradition, Nima's second directory. Now I go ls. Holy moly, I see my folders. How cool is that? Let's say I want to do something inside of Nima's first directory. What do? CD. I can change directory. That's what CD stands for. Change directory into Nima's first directory. Did you notice that? Did you notice what I just did? Like, whoa, did Nima write like 8 characters all at once? Hot dog. No wonder this guy got his job. He can like 4 fingers. Nah, man. I go CD, I start writing Nima, and then I go tab. And it auto-completes. Tab. Let's say I want to pick first. I go F, tab, and it auto-completed everything else. Right? I'm a lazy man. I'm a very lazy man. So I'm not going to put in the work. I'm like, yo, if I can press the tab and let everything else kind of happen automatically, I will let it happen. Okay, I'm in here. I want to go to a different folder. I was wrong. I wanted to go to Nima's second directory. I go cd ... And that brought me back. And I can check again, ls, right. cd, Nima's second directory. Right? Now, you can always press up on your arrow keys to go up into your history of the commands. And similarly, you can press down to go downwards, right? So if you want to run a command that you ran earlier, just go up, right? You don't need to write it out all again, right? Up. OK. Actually, oh, you might find this cool. So say I run a command like print working directory, PWD. This is going to print out the folder that I'm currently in, like the entire path. For the sake of the story, imagine that this command had been something like really, really long, right? Like really, really long. And I needed to run it with like a little bit of a change to it, right? Like maybe I needed to run something like, I don't think you've talked about sudo yet, but maybe I needed to run the same command that I wrote earlier, but I needed to write sudo before it. Instead of writing sudo and then the whole command after it, you can do a thing that's sudo exclamation mark twice. Sudo bang bang. An exclamation mark is called a bang. So this is a bang bang. Right? Sudo bang bang, and that bang bang will just turn into the previous command. Right? You don't need to know this, but I'm just trying to show you there's these tools, right? Play around with them, get comfortable with them. This is your interface to the computer. Right? Cool. Now, we are going to talk specifically about Git. Let me cd out of here. Let me make a folder called awesome project. Holy moly, what an awesome project. And inside of awesome project, I want to make some files. Let me make my screen a little bit bigger. I want to make some files. Now, I could navigate to this folder. Right? I could navigate to this folder with Sublime, for example. Right? I could, if I was Don. I don't know if you haven't met Don yet, but like Don likes a tool called Vim. Right? I could use Vim, which lets me edit text files from the command line. Right? Yeah, me too. I feel so compelled to be like, who's there? But I could do things like touch. What does touch do? Does anybody know? Creates a file. So touch will create a file, and I'll call this one anything I want. Testfile.js. Right? When I ls now, I have this thing called testfile.js. Right? Now let me open this up in Sublime real quick. Oh snap! Right. I'm gonna sound really silly. Hey Jeremy. Okay, I need your other Jeremy. Sorry. Yeah. Navigating to a file within Vagrant with Sublime. I actually just realized I'm not a Vagrant guy. You can't. Oh, okay. No. Like from Sublime. How did we do this? I just realized that I never work in Vagrant, and I did all my Git stuff outside of Vagrant. Yeah. How do you all open up your stuff from Vagrant and Sublime?
Go to the Vagrant file, open the Finder folder, and then we can run the folder, yeah. And then maybe you right-click and say Sublime here or something like that.
Sublime here?
You might be able to open the Sublime button.
No, but like the stuff is just not visible.
There's the files into there.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I'll be honest. This isn't because I'm particularly dumb. Like I'm sort of dumb, right? This particular instance is because like Vagrant is a thing that we use for boot camp, right? It's not a thing that you generally use necessarily outside of boot camp. We use it so that everybody's working on the same environment. But when you go work somewhere, you'll be working on your normal computer without Vagrant, right? So this reflects poorly on me. I'm sorry for that. Yes.
So like where the Vagrant file lives, that folder is a shared folder between your Mac. So whatever you drop in there.
Oh. I love this. Okay, so Heyo, thank you. Okay, so here is my folder called hello, which is the folder that I'm working in. I'm just going to call this one awesome project like before. Awesome project. And this folder here at the moment has a file maybe called whatup.js, maybe, thank you for that, maybe I'll call this one assignment1.js, right? Maybe, whatever I want to call it. I could go to Sublime now and start working on that thing. And so here I am inside of Awesome Project, right? And I'm seeing assignment 1. And maybe I'll make some changes to it, right? I mean, we'll start working a little bit off of, maybe if I feel like it, like off of one of the actual assignments. But maybe the assignment is like, oh, console log a bunch of stuff. Also, do a loop. Also make a variable and add 3 to it and console log it, right? Wow, what a cool assignment. Exciting, I have stuff to do. And I'm like, cool, I'll console log a bunch of stuff. Maybe I'll Google things, maybe I'll figure out how does console log work, and eventually I might realize I can do console log. This isn't a JavaScript lesson today, so I'll console log a bunch of stuff. Cool. I've done part of the assignment. Awesome. Now, I could go on and work on the second part of the, like, I just haven't finished it yet. I still have a couple things. I could keep working on it at risk of maybe ruining the stuff that I did previously, right? I don't have some kind of history to this thing, right? So maybe what I'll do is I'll go in Finder, and I'll say, hey, awesome, like assignment 1. Let me just save a copy of that. Whoops, not get info, but let me just save a copy of it. And I'm going to call that copy assignment 1 first version. All right? We're going down a good path here, right, of doing things. And then I'd make some more changes to it in assignment 1 first version. I do a loop. So I go for let, var I equals 0, I is less than 10, I plus plus. There's a bunch of stuff. And then I do stuff. Console.log I. Cool, I've done some stuff. Second version, cool. So I'm going to go to first version. I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to rename this to second version. All right? Second. Is this a good workflow? Probably not. It's probably like the worst workflow you could possibly have. But we've all done this in our lives. Like, you'd be lying if you said you didn't, because you have, right? Everybody has that whole like paper final version, paper actually final version. I totally mean it this time. Oh my God, I need to submit this and go to bed, final version, I promise, right? Like that happens, right? So we come up with a tool that lets us get around doing stuff like that. What do we need to talk about here? We need to talk about version control, right? Version control, and specifically managing our source code. Let me scroll down a little bit. Git. Git is the program that we will be using to control the versions of our files, right? To control the versions of our project. So as we make changes to our project, we will be using this program called Git to track those changes, right? I'll very, very quickly talk about the history of Git. In 2006, people used a thing called BitKeeper, right? BitKeeper is a version control system, right? Git's not the only one. Like BitKeeper was one of them. It's a version control system for the Linux kernel, right? Linus Torvalds, right? Linus Torvalds was the author of the Linux kernel, right? So Linux is part of an operating system, right? So Linus Torvalds was the author of that thing, of the Linux kernel. Now the thing here is, Linus decided to write his own version of BitKeeper, right? Like write his own version of a version control system, right? Because he was unhappy with the people that managed BitKeeper, right? Linus is a huge jerk, so he's like, yo, I'm gonna do it myself, and then he swore at a bunch of people. You can go look up the blog posts and whatever. He's an angry guy. April 3rd. April 6th, he finished it. He's done, right? So a good old 3 days later, and probably a couple, Mountain Dews and Red Bulls or whatever, he's all done. Announces that Git is finished by April 9th. By April 9th, Git was using itself for version control. So Git is a program, right? Git is a program, so there's code that's used to create Git. So by April 9th, they were using Git to track the source code of Git, self-hosting, right? Things are getting meta here. And then by April 12th, the first release of the Linux kernel was done through Git, right? Like Linux had been released through BitKeeper before, but now it was done through Git. Now, Git is the program that does version control software. The name for Git is not as poetic as one might think. It's not really that, it doesn't really explain what Git does. Linus is just a jerk, and he likes being mean to people. So Git's just British slang for calling someone like an idiot, right? So there's Git. Now before we even look at what Git is and how it works, here are the goals that Git works towards. We need our version control to be fast. We need our version control to be whatever distributed means. Okay, let's talk about what distributed means. I might have one computer that I'm working on, but I might be working on a project with somebody else. I need my Git to be distributed among different computers, right? So that'll be enough for us for right now. Git needs to be secure. I need to be able to make sure that the things that I write, right, don't get corrupted, right? They don't get corrupted. All those little changes, it would defeat the purpose if Git broke and it corrupted all my changes, or if people who weren't supposed to have access to things ended up having access to things, right? So there's a level of security. And then this part right here, Git is very smart. Well, what does that mean? We're going to see that Git does a lot of heavy lifting for us, right? So there are 3 parts to Git. The first is this thing called a repository. So for this, I'm going to make my way over to the whiteboard because I've been sitting for a while. So let's go over to the whiteboard. That's not the whiteboard. And okay, so none of the cameras are pointing that way, which is fine. It'll just be like whoever watches the stream eventually won't see this. Blue is a good thing. Repo. Repo. Branch. And commit. Important words. Bad writing, but like important words. Repo is the place where I store the code, right? A physical place where I'm storing the code, right? I might have a repo on my computer, right? So let's say I'm talking about my computer, right? I have Git installed and I start a new repository, right? That means that a folder becomes enhanced with Git properties, right? So I might, like in a second, I'm going to go over to the folder that I made and I'm going to turn it into a repository, right? So we're going to see that some files get added to that repo, to that folder, right? So there's a repository on my computer. Let's say on my PC. Okay, on my PC, repo. Branch. There is a lineage of the work that I do, right? If I'm over the thing I was doing before, I made first version, second version, maybe I made a third version. They all follow each other sequentially, right? The second version comes naturally out of the changes made to the first version, right? So you could say that there's a lineage of these versions that live on what we're going to call a branch right now, right? A branch. Your branch, by default, is going to be called master, right? So that's what we're going to talk about right now. A master branch that hosts the history of your project, right? And every time you want to make a new entry into the history, That's called a commit. Okay? So my first version was a commit. And then I make a bunch of changes, and I save another commit. And then I make another bunch of changes, and I save another commit. Right? And with each of these commits, I have saved a point in time of my project. And I will be able to maybe go backwards in time or forwards in time, right? That is the benefit of this, right? Now, we are going to really play around with this right now, right? But I just wanted to break out these words. Repository is where we're hosting the thing, right? Branch is that line of history. And a commit is every new entry into your history. Right? We're going to do all this stuff manually right now. Cool. So let me hop into here, right here. Okay. I have done ls. I've done ls inside of my awesome project, and I see that I have 3 files in here. Now, just for myself, I don't like having these other 2, so I'm going to delete. Honestly, let me just delete everything. rm star deletes everything. ls, I have nothing left. All right, so let me just make a new file real quick. Example.js. I have this file called example.js. Awesome. Now, I might want to save the fact that I have created example.js. I might want to start saving all the history of this folder. So we are going to run this command. Git init. Initiate. Git init. So git init inside of the folder that I want to be a repository. Initialized an empty repository, an empty Git repository in that folder. If I do ls right now, nothing's changed. But if I do la, right, or for you it might be ls-a, right, I will see that there is a .git that I promise you was not there before. Right? Inside of here, that whole history is saved, but you don't have to worry about that, right? I'm just telling you that's where the stuff is being saved. Let's look at another command right here. This is a command called git status, right? Git status. Now it's going to feel like I'm just pulling all this stuff out of thin air, but I will give you a cheat sheet later, right? Git status. Git status will tell me the status of my repository. So if my folder is that repository, right now it's telling me that, hey, you are not currently tracking anything, and you don't have any commits, right? So let's look over here. If I was to think about my repository right now, this is what I have. Absolutely nothing. I have a repository on my computer. I probably have a branch. Now, I've made my terminal spit this stuff out. Yours doesn't, but I'm on a branch called master. So the master branch is created automatically when you go git init. Right? So I'm on my computer in the repo, master branch, but there's no commits. There's no commits, and I happen to have a single file. Oh, somebody ripped the, that's funny. Okay. I happen to have a single file called example.js. Example.js, and I also have one that my Mac generated called .dsstore. Right? That one's just generated by Macs sometimes. I want to track the history of example.js. I want to track the history of that thing. So I need to tell Git to watch that file. Right? It's not going to do it automatically. I need to tell it, watch that file. So what I'll do is I will say add this file. I will say add this file, right, to be tracked. And I can say git add, and then I can write out the name of the file. Git add example.js. Let me do git status again. Git status. Has anything changed? Yeah. It tells me that Git is ready to make a commit. Git is ready to make a commit with some changes. And those changes are that there's a new file. It's called example.js, right? I'm tracking those changes now because I told it to look at that, right? New file, example.js. So we've got git init, git status, and git add, right? Just mash git status all the time. Check to see what the status of your repository is, right? What have been the changes, right? I've added, and just because I've added that change doesn't mean it's being committed yet. It just means that Git is aware of it, right? It's in like a staging area, right? So what I have to do now, is formally commit. I have to commit my change. I can go git commit, and I'm going to throw an M next to it, so git commit -m. If you don't put an M next to it and you don't do the rest of it, it will just put you into a place where you have to write a message. But git commit -m, this is going to give me the opportunity to write a little message about my commit. So in my case, what I've done is specifically I've created example.js. So I'll write a message that helps me out that says, hey, create example.js. So that as I look through my history later, when I have 1,000 changes that I've made, right? Or if the changes are really complicated, I'll be able to just read the message and understand what's going on. Right? And here we go. It says, cool. I've made this commit to master, right? One file has changed. 0 insertions and 0 deletions means no lines have changed in the file, but it's created one file. So I now have a commit. If I check git status now, the only change here is ds store exists. For my sake, I'm just going to remove ds store from my file folder. There you go. So if I was to go git status, it says there's nothing to commit. Okay, nothing to commit. Let me go over here again now into, what is it, this one here, example.js. So if example.js looks like this at the moment, or sorry, it looked like this, it was blank, right? I might paste in some stuff now, or I might make some changes to it. Here, I put in a bunch of comments. I'm console logging some things, right? I've made some changes. Now, specifically, I've personally only made 2 unique changes. I've added in a bunch of comments, and I console logged something, right? This is a place where I say, hey, I've actually done some quantifiable work, right? Like, I can quantify the fact that I've made a little bit of progress, right? Git status. It tells me that I modified that folder, or that file. Git add, and I can git add that change, like the change of that file, right, which is example.js. And if I go git status now, it tells me it's ready to upload that change, right, to commit that. I'm going to go git commit, console log, haha. Now I have 2 commits. 2 commits. You'll notice that this commit says, hey, there were 10 insertions. I added 10 new lines, right? Are we seeing the workflow here, right, of how Git kind of works? I keep making changes, and I keep adding them to my line of history. So what I have now is I have a master branch that has 1 commit where I just created a file, and another commit that I just made where I added some lines to that file. Okay? Let me just do another one real quick. I just want to show you that this is the kind of thing that you just keep doing on the fly. Do a loop for let I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, some stuff, just some loop. I just add some code, and I say, hey, this is a quantifiable change that I've made to my code. I go git status, git status. It says, oh, there's a change. I'll go git add. Now, I could write the name of the file, or say I wanted to add all of the changes. Like, say I had 40 files that I changed, and I want to add all 40 files to my commit. I don't necessarily need to write the name of every file. I can go git add -a. That adds all the file changes, right? So I go git status now, and I see that example.js has been added. I can go git commit. And in my thing, I'll say do a loop, maybe, right? And now over here, I have added another commit, right? I've added another commit. If I decided that I was unhappy with this loop and I wanted to undo it, I'm not going to show you this now. But the reason behind why we want to keep a history is because Git makes it possible for us to hop backwards, right? Git makes it possible for us to hop backwards as far back as we want to, right? So Git is super cool, and I'm just using this stuff locally, right? I'm using this stuff locally on my computer, right? Nobody else currently has access to it. But let's talk about these things right here. I'm going to ignore these ones. I'm going to delete those. It's not actually 11. It's more like 8. Yeah, I can count. Nice. So all of this stuff has currently been done locally. And if I want to see like a summary of all the changes I've made, I can go git log. Right? So git log will print out a history of every single change I've made, or at least the latest ones. So I have 3 changes. One of them was create example.js, then I console log, then I did a loop. Do you notice some interesting things about this? My name is in there, right, with my email. The time was there, right? And each commit has a unique ID. Did I type out these IDs? No, they're uniquely generated, right? So every single change in point in time, like in my history of the project, is saved. And I can refer back to it whenever I want. Make these messages make sense. So when I say commit at a quantifiable moment in time, right? Like when you, not quantifiable moment in time, quantifiable change in your project, right? That's when you feel that you have made a little bit of progress, where you feel scared if your computer would have crashed and you didn't have your stuff saved, right? Like imagine Git as your command S for saving, right? Whenever you get that little feeling in your chest, commit, right? It means you've probably done something you want to save, right? Now, it's going to get a little bit more nuanced as you work forward, but work with that feeling right now, right? Just keep committing. Get comfortable with that. Now, again, this stuff just lives on my computer right now. It just lives on my computer, and I might want to put this somewhere so that other people can access my project as well, right? This is the last part that we're going to do. So if I, is it the last part? Yeah, because this is also assignment workflow for those wondering. That's the same thing. So in your assignments, you're given something to clone a lot of the time. You're given something to clone, right? Have you heard that word yet? Cool. You're given something to clone, you work on it, right? And then eventually you have to push it somewhere and give us a link to it, right? And the place where you might push it is somewhere like GitHub, for example. So let me hop into GitHub. And this is me. This is my GitHub, right? Look, it's me. I have a bunch of repos, right? Repositories. We heard that word before. We heard about repositories being a physical place where that stuff is being stored. Currently, my repository for the project that we've been working on in the past couple minutes is on my computer. But I can also host a repository on another computer. In this case, on the GitHub computers, right? I'll press the little plus button. New repository, right? New repository. I'll give this a name. Cool project thing. OK, cool. I picked a name. Picked a nice, unique name. Maybe I want a little description or something. I'm going to leave this stuff not changed at the moment, right? I want to let you explore this. Or if you have questions, like ask me. But I'm going to skip straight to clicking create repository. And this will have essentially, somewhere on a computer far away, gone git init. That's what it's done, right? And it's given us a web page where we can see that folder. Are there any files on this folder? Apparently not yet. But I can start adding them, right? There's a couple different things that we could do to take the project that we've been working on and push it to GitHub, right? You could follow these instructions up here to create a new repository, and you'll recognize some of these things. Git init, git add, git commit. We did all those things. These last two lines are the ones that we're going to be working with right now, which is pushing an existing repository from the command line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say git remote add. Git remote add and then a name. In this case, we've picked the name origin. It's just a name. Right? Git remote add origin, and I'm going to paste that into my terminal. Git remote add origin, and it's pointing to my repository. Cool. I've added a remote repository that I have called origin. Okay? A remote repository that I've called origin. And now, if I wanted to take the changes that I made on my computer, the commits that I made on my computer, and push them to the remote repository, I will run git push -u origin master. Right? Origin is the name of the repository I'm pushing to, right? So on my computer, the GitHub repository has been called origin. Master is the branch that I'm pushing to, right? I'm pushing master, right? Because that's the only branch that I have at the moment. Single line called master, right? So as soon as I run this code here, right, in the terminal, huh? -u is set upstream. Am I right about that, Jeremy? Yeah, -u is set upstream. What it means is my branch locally will know who to listen to, right, for future changes. So in the future, if somebody has made a change on the repository in origin, my computer will be able to, with a single command, bring those changes in. Right? Likewise, my computer now always knows where to push because it's been set as the upstream place. Okay? Well, we'll see that maybe in a sec. I run git push -u origin master. It's going to pump out a bunch of info, and it's saying, OK, it's pushed itself up there. And you'll see it's pushed from my local master to the remote master. Right? And I could go to that place now, which happens to be this place. Right? I could refresh. And what I'll see now in a second is my project is hosted on GitHub. Not only is my project hosted on GitHub, how many commits did we make? 3 commits. How many commits are on GitHub? 3 commits. Who made them? Nima Boscarino. Do you remember me writing do a loop? I do, right? I could click on commits, and I can see the history of all of my commits. Right? I could just go to my code, and I can see my most current code. Right? So for you, you're going to be pushing to GitHub, right, and then giving us the link to your GitHub repo for that particular assignment, right? And we'll be looking at that. Does that make sense? Awesome. So I would suggest for every single assignment, make it its own GitHub repo and its own local repo, right? So if you are storing your stuff into like week 1 assignments, and in there you have a bunch of folders, right? Make each one of those smaller folders, like the last folders, make those repos by going git init inside of them, okay? Right? Practice that and get the mentors to really check to see that you've set the structure up correctly, right? So that you can save your work properly, okay? I really, really suggest just drag me or one of the other mentors down and like have us look at it to make sure that you set it up right. Cool. That kind of brings me to the end of it, really. Except for, since you mentioned what set upstream or -u does, just wanted to show you, if somebody else, let's imagine somebody else had access to my repository and they made changes to the thing that I do not have on my local computer, right? Some changes that I do not have. Like, for example, you can go into this stuff just with GitHub and use the edit this file. I don't ever suggest doing this, but you could, right? Like, you could do all your assignments through here if you wanted to. Say I made a variable, right? I made a change. GitHub lets me immediately just commit those changes. But the important thing to see is that I have made these changes remotely, not on my computer, right? So if I look at example over on GitHub, I have var hello equals world. But if I look at it over on my computer, I do not have that right now. I do not have those changes. I can pull those changes with git pull. And it will tell me, hey, you pulled a single change from your remote. Somebody added 3 lines or whatever, right? Like somebody made 2 insertions and 1 deletion, right? There were 3 changes. Added 2 lines, removed 1. And now if I go look at here, if I was to look at it, now it's added var hello world to it, right? Because I pulled those changes, right? So there's this pushing and pulling, committing. These are the things that we're looking at, right? Now, when you look at the, where did I put it? When you look at the cheat sheet, which is going to look like, not like that, that's my schedule. When you look at the cheat sheet, that's going to look like this, right? Get workflow cheat sheet. There's many more commands that I haven't talked about. Play around with them, right? Take the time to just really play, right? That brings us to the end of this. Once again, the notes will be out really soon. I recommend playing with Sublime Tutor, and I recommend playing around with the Git cheat sheet. Are there any questions before I let you go? Cool. I am very excited for you to get started with this. Seriously, like, I'm so hyped. Let me know if you do have questions, and just have a good time, all right? Thanks for sitting in on this extra long breakout. I promise the next ones will be just an hour long. Dope. Thanks, everyone. Oh, thank you.